She was just a hotel maid, crying quietly in a hallway, begging her family not to sell her father's medal for insulin money. He was a billionaire, passing by, until her voice stopped him. Eva Moreno had no idea her life was about to change, not because she was saved, but because someone finally saw her. What began as a job offer turned into something far deeper. A fight for dignity, a past that resurfaced, and a love story built on respect and second chances. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more powerful tales. The industrial hallway behind the Grand Bellamy Hotel's kitchen always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and overworked dreams. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like tired bees, casting harsh shadows over metal carts and stacks of delivery boxes. It was here, wedged between a mop bucket and a broken vending machine, that Eva Moreno curled in on herself, her knees pulled tight to her chest, the blue apron of her uniform wrinkled and damp at the edges. She held the phone close, her voice barely above the hum of the old air conditioning unit overhead. "No, Tia Rosa, please don't sell the metal. It's all we have left of him," she whispered, her voice catching like fabric snagged on a nail. "I'll find the money for Mateo's insulin. I promise. Just give me 2 more days." From the other end came only static and a muffled sob, then her aunt's quiet, broken voice. "But what if we don't have 2 days?" Eva bit down on her bottom lip until she tasted blood. Her body trembled, not just from the cold air, but from the mounting weight pressing into her chest. She had worked 18 days straight, back-to-back shifts, skipped meals, borrowed money she didn't know how to return. And still, it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough. "I'll clean the loading docks. I'll do doubles," she said, her voice rising in urgency. "Just don't let him think we've given up." A door creaked open down the corridor, and she froze. Her hand flew to her face to wipe away tears, just as footsteps echoed softly against the tile. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out from a service elevator at the far end, his attention buried in a phone. He moved with a kind of absent confidence, like someone who didn't need to look up to command a room. Nathaniel Hayes had just ended a late-night call with a board in Singapore. His face was impassive, jaw tight, the kind of expression that had graced too many financial magazines to count. He was used to noise, market crashes, buyouts, sycophants, but this noise stopped him. Not the voice, but the silence between the words. The sound of someone trying not to be heard. He paused behind a stack of crates, just out of view. He shouldn't be here. She was just a hotel employee, one of hundreds. But something in her voice, the way she didn't cry for herself, the way she studied it to protect someone else, unsettled something in him. Eva stood quickly and shoved the phone into her apron. Her face was blotchy, her eyes glassy, but she adjusted the apron at her waist with practiced precision, grabbed the mop, and moved toward the storage room like nothing had happened. She passed him without seeing him. But he saw her. The next morning, Eva was pushing a cart of clean linens down the same hallway when a voice called out, firm, direct, but not unkind. "Excuse me." She turned and stiffened. The man from last night stood at the hallway's end. Same suit, different tie, but the same unreadable expression. She opened her mouth to apologize instinctively, but he lifted a hand. "Don't," he said. "I overheard you. I was in the corner suite." Her cheeks flushed red. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." "I'm not filing a complaint," he interrupted gently. "In fact," he pulled a black card from his coat pocket and handed it to her. On it, embossed in silver, was his name and an address. "If you're open to a different kind of opportunity, come by tonight, 7 o'clock. Her fingers trembled as she accepted it. "Why me?" He studied her for a long beat before answering. "Because some people break when they're desperate." "You cried, then went back to work. And then, just like that," he walked away, leaving her alone with her doubts, her heartbeat, and the quiet, breathless possibility that someone had finally seen her. The house wasn't what Eva expected. She thought it would be cold, too big, some sleek modern fortress perched on a cliff like a Bond villain's lair. But the estate at the edge of Alder Lane was quiet, older, wrapped in ivy and stillness. It had a sloping porch with wooden columns and windows that glowed golden in the dusk. The gate had opened with a low buzz after she gave her name, and now she stood there, heart pounding, hands damp, clutching the card that had gotten her here like it was a passport to another life. She wore her cleanest clothes, a borrowed cardigan, jeans with a mended hem, and scuffed shoes that didn't quite fit. Her braid was neat, her back straight, but everything inside her wanted to bolt. This could be a setup, a cruel joke, a test she was bound to fail. But she stayed. The door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a crisp white blouse greeted her with a small nod. "You must be Miss Moreno. I'm Diana. I manage the house." Eva tried to smile, but it felt stiff. "Thank you for having me." Diana stepped aside, motioning her in. The air inside smelled like sandalwood and something older, like books and memory. The furniture was rich but lived in. A record player rested on a corner table, half covered by a crocheted cloth. She passed a hallway of framed photographs, people smiling in black and white, then fading into color. Diana led her to a small sunroom near the back of the house. 2 chairs, a table with a teapot, soft yellow cushions. Nothing extravagant, just gentle. "He'll be with you shortly," Diana said and closed the door behind her. 10 minutes passed. Eva sat with her hands in her lap, back straight, rehearsing exit lines in her head. Then Nathaniel stepped in, not in a suit this time, just dark jeans and a navy sweater. Still composed but without the armor, more human. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice quieter than she expected. "I wasn't sure I should," Eva admitted. "I wasn't sure you'd remember." "I do." He poured her a cup of tea and handed it to her carefully. She noticed he didn't sit across from her immediately. He waited, like she might change her mind. When she didn't move, he sat. "I'd like to offer you a job," he said plainly. "It's not charity, it pays well, and it's temporary." She blinked. "What kind of job?" He leaned back slightly as though measuring his words. "You'd help around the house, assist Diana, help me sort and digitize a collection of my father's personal documents. It's mostly boring, letters, speeches, notes." He was obsessive. "I need someone detail-oriented, someone who notices small things." "Why me?" she asked again, quieter. Nathaniel hesitated, then said, "I don't know yet, but I trust that I'll find out." She glanced down at the tea, the steam curling like smoke. "I already have a job, at the hotel. I spoke to the manager. You're part-time. They agreed to release you if you accept." Her brows drew together. "That's very coordinated." "I don't do things halfway," he replied, not smug, just true. Silence stretched between them, not awkward but dense with everything unspoken. Finally she asked, "What happens when it ends?" "Then it ends," he said, "or it doesn't. That part's not written." She studied him carefully. He didn't look like he pitied her. He looked interested, maybe even hopeful, but not desperate. He seemed like someone who had built walls to keep the world out, then quietly wondered what it would feel like to let one person in. "I need to send money home," she said at last. "You'll be paid weekly, in advance. You'll have full health coverage, no cameras, no NDAs, just one rule." She raised an eyebrow. "What's the rule?" "No apologies," he said. "Not for being here, not for needing help, not for surviving." Her throat tightened. She didn't trust easily. But something in her steadied. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's enough." He extended a hand. She took it. His grip was steady, not cold, not commanding, just sure. And for the first time in a long, long time, Eva didn't feel like she was waiting to be dismissed. She felt like she'd just been invited in. By the 3rd morning, Eva had stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. There were no raised voices, no locked doors, no one checking behind her as she cleaned. Mara, Diana's younger sister and part-time cook, left her 2 mugs of coffee each dawn with a checklist that read more like gentle suggestions than commands. Breakfast at 7. Nathaniel prefers tea, not coffee. Toast just barely browned. No need to serve, just keep things moving. Eva scribbled notes in a tiny spiral-bound notebook and nodded, her instinct to overplease still clinging, but slowly loosening. She folded napkins she hadn't used, dusted baseboards that were already clean. It wasn't nerves, it was habit. For years, she had proven herself in the cracks of systems that expected her to fail. Prove your worth. Disappear afterward. But here, no one seemed to be watching for her to fall. They were just watching. Mid-morning, she entered a room she hadn't seen before. High ceilings, tall windows veiled with gauzy curtains. The air smelled like old glue and dust, but not unpleasantly. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, labeled in neat capital letters. 1983 campaign, personal. Eliza, letters, 1974 to 1991. On a nearby table sat yellowing flyers and press clippings. She was still bent over an old campaign ad for Nathaniel's father, when the door creaked behind her. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. She turned, startled. "I didn't mean to intrude." The door was unlocked. "It's not intruding," he said with a shrug, stepping inside. He wanted everything saved. Speeches, receipts, letters he never sent, said history lives in the margins. Eva ran her fingers over a sealed envelope marked "Not Yet." "Did you read all of them?" "Most. Some. I can't. Not yet." He pulled a folder from a nearby crate and handed it to her. "This one's a mess. Disorganized. Sort it. Read it." She hesitated. "Is it private?" "Not confidential," he said after a pause, "but personal. People he admired, people he couldn't forgive, people he loved but never told." Her fingers tightened on the folder. "And you want me to read them?" "I think you'll understand them better than I can." She nodded slowly, her chest oddly heavy. He didn't say anything else, just turned and left with the same quiet gravity he always carried. Eva opened the folder. Letters written in fountain pen, some smudged, others fiercely crossed out. There was one to Eliza, his former fiancée, dated 3 weeks before her disappearance. The words weren't angry. They were tired. A man asking someone to come home, not because he needed to win, but because he missed being lost together. Days passed. Eva developed a rhythm, mornings in the kitchen, afternoons in the parlor, sorting through history that smelled of lavender and faded ambition. She often paused to wipe tears, not even sure whose pain she was mourning. Nathaniel's father, Nathaniel, herself. At night, she wandered the hallways, whispering thoughts into her own silence. She had always lived in borrowed spaces, temporary places. This one felt no different, until he began lingering longer. She would pass him in the hallway, in the garden. Not watching, just present. She caught his gaze once as she rearranged old books on the study shelves, and he didn't look away. His expression wasn't curious or calculating. He simply looked like someone seeing something he hadn't known was missing. Others lived in the house too. Mara's older brother, a veteran with a cane, painted quietly on the back porch. Beth, a retired nurse, visited twice a week to cook and chat. They weren't staff, they weren't guests. They were people who had been broken in half by life, and instead of being discarded, had been gathered here, like bones meant to heal into something stronger. One evening, Eva passed Nathaniel near the garden steps. He was kneeling in the soil, tending to a row of fragile-looking herbs. "I didn't expect you to be a gardener," she said. He looked up, dirt on his palms. "I'm not, but they're mine. If something dies, I want to know I tried." She stepped closer, folding her arms. "That's rare from someone like you." He dusted his hands on his jeans. "Power doesn't mean saving things. It means caring enough to try." They stood there in the quiet. Then he added, "I don't bring people here because they're broken. I bring them because they still try." She swallowed. "Even if they don't know what to do with a second chance," he looked at her and said softly, "especially then." And in that moment, Eva realized she wasn't being watched for flaws. She was being seen. The day of the charity gala arrived cloaked in cold silver rain. Eva stood by the mirror, her hands shaking slightly as she fastened the clasp of the dress she'd made from donated fabric, a navy blue piece with subtle darts and a modest neckline, stitched in long, patient hours after dark. The shoes were secondhand but clean. Her hair, pulled into a simple chignon, had started to come loose at the sides, softening her face. She didn't look like someone trying to be someone else. She looked like someone finally allowing herself to be seen. Nathaniel had arrived separately. He slipped through the crowd like he belonged, every movement calm, purposeful. But when his eyes found hers across the room, something shifted. His shoulders eased. His expression softened in that quiet way she was beginning to recognize. Not pride, not possessiveness, but a kind of relief. She was here. She had come. The event moved swiftly. Small talk, hors d'oeuvres, speeches. Then came the presentation. A slideshow of community leaders and nominees lit up the screen, each name followed by polite applause. Eva smiled tightly, clapping along, grateful just to have been included. Until the next slide. A grainy photograph appeared on the projector. Eva, in a wrinkled hotel uniform, standing outside a courthouse beside a public defender, her stepfather snarling at the camera beside her. The caption, "Former suspect in hotel theft, cleared due to lack of evidence." A ripple moved through the crowd. Whispers, gasps, someone said too loudly, Isn't that her? Eva froze. Her breath caught in her throat like glass. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Her legs felt disconnected from the floor. Shame washed over her in hot waves. That case had nearly destroyed her. She'd taken a plea deal for something she hadn't done just to protect her younger brother from being taken into foster care. Even after it was overturned, the damage stuck like tar. She wanted to run, but before she could even step back, a voice rose above the crowd. "Thank you for reminding us that the internet never forgets," Nathaniel said, stepping forward and taking the mic from the stunned host, "especially when it wants to shame someone who dared to rebuild." The room fell silent. "You've seen a photo," he continued, his voice clear and unwavering. "Let me tell you about the person in it." His eyes found hers, and for a second, everything else dropped away. "This is Eva Moreno. She teaches sewing to people who've been told they have no value. She buys fabric with her own wages. She brings dignity to those who've forgotten how to see it in themselves. She survived what most of us wouldn't, and instead of bitterness, she chose kindness. Instead of running, she stood her ground. If you think a past accusation defines someone's worth, then you haven't met Eva." He stepped down and extended his hand. And the room, so quick to judge just moments ago, was now still. Watching, waiting. Eva didn't move because she needed saving. She walked toward him because the look in his eyes said you never had to run alone. She took his hand. They left quietly, slipping into the rain-soaked night. Outside, the wind tugged at her skirt and loosened her hair further. She turned to him, voice quiet but sharp with feeling. "You weren't supposed to do that." "Yes," he said simply, "I was." "I hate that it still follows me," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't," he replied. "It means you never stopped caring about who you become." She stared at him. "Would you have stood up for me if it had been true?" He didn't flinch. "Yes, because what we've lived through matters, but what we choose next matters more." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Only that look in her eyes, full, unflinching, and new. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. "Neither did I," he said, "but I'm not walking away from it." This time, when she reached for his hand, he didn't just hold it, he held her. And in that moment, under soft streetlights and the hush of the crowd they'd left behind, the weight of the past finally loosened its grip. What remained was not rescue, but recognition. Not perfection, but promise. The sewing room buzzed with quiet energy, needles tapping, threads tangling, laughter rising like soft music. What had once been an unused sunroom now glowed with life. Eva stood at the front, guiding a young mother through her first hem. Beth sat in the corner helping a teenager reattach a lost button. The walls were lined with fabric bolts and chalk patterns, and the windows were cracked open, letting in the scent of lilac and wet grass. They had called it the corner workshop, but it had become much more. Part classroom, part sanctuary, and wholly hers. Nathaniel slipped in without a word, leaning against the doorframe. He watched her, not with possessiveness, but admiration. Eva didn't notice him at first. Her hands were moving, her voice gentle, her attention entirely on the people before her. It wasn't until she started folding chairs after class that she saw him standing there. "You're different when you teach," he said softly. She arched an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Like you don't realize you're the one building something." Eva smiled faintly and didn't answer. She wiped down a table with practiced ease, and then, without looking at him, asked, "When this all ends, when I leave, what do you think I should do?" He stepped closer, not invading but near enough that she could feel the weight of the question behind his answer. "I think whatever it is, it should be yours. Even if it's small, even if it's just one corner of the world." She nodded slowly, more to herself than to him. "Then I'll build it." Later that night she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the quiet settle around her. Not heavy, but full. Full of questions she wasn't afraid to ask anymore. What if she stayed? What if this wasn't temporary? What if this was the life she was allowed to build, brick by brick, with her own hands? The next morning, Eva awoke to the smell of warm bread and the familiar clink of porcelain. When she entered the kitchen, Mara was setting out 3 mugs. Eva paused in the doorway. Beside Mara stood a tall, composed woman in a cream coat and modest heels. Her hair was neatly pinned, and her presence filled the room with the weight of old wealth and careful observation. Eva recognized her instantly, from photos, from reputation. "Eva," Mara said gently, "this is Eleanor Hayes, Nathaniel's mother." Eleanor turned, expression unreadable. "I've heard quite a bit about you." Eva swallowed. "It's nice to meet you, ma'am." Nathaniel entered a moment later, his posture straightening slightly at the sight of his mother. Not tense, but alert. They had breakfast together, conversation moving lightly between the weather, the garden, and Eva's workshop. Eleanor poured the tea herself, asked thoughtful but probing questions. Under each word sat the same unspoken query. "Who are you, and what do you want with my son?" Afterward, Eleanor asked Eva to walk with her through the back garden. The air was cool, and the gravel crunched softly beneath their steps. "I lost my husband to cancer when Nathaniel was 23, Eleanor said suddenly, not looking at her. "He turned his grief into buildings and contracts. Then he lost her, and that almost broke him." Eva said nothing, just listened. "I'm not here to question your character," Eleanor continued, "but I am going to ask something only you can answer." She stopped, turned to face her. "Are you here because you love him, or because he was the first person who didn't look away?" Eva's throat tightened, but she didn't break eye contact. "I didn't come here to fall in love," she said. "I came because I had nowhere else left. But what I found wasn't just kindness. It was the first place that didn't treat me like I was lucky just to be allowed in." She paused, then added, voice unwavering, "I don't love him because he saved me. I love him because he never once acted like I needed saving." Eleanor studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "I believe you, but I'm his mother. I'll worry until I die." That afternoon, Eleanor lingered longer than planned. She read with Eva's younger brother Matteo, now staying nearby. She peeked into the workshop, smiled faintly. Before leaving, she pressed a small tin into Nathaniel's hands. "You used to love these," she said. Later, Eva found the tin on the kitchen counter. Inside, 6 almond shortbread cookies. Only 3 remained. Next to them was a folded note in delicate script. "It takes strength to survive alone. It takes something braver to stay when you're finally safe." Eva held the note for a long time, then smiled softly. She wasn't just being allowed to stay. She was being trusted. Sometimes the most powerful transformations don't begin with rescue. They begin with being seen. Eva's journey reminds us that people carry invisible burdens, and what looks like survival on the outside may actually be quiet desperation within. But when someone chooses to stand beside you, not to fix you, not to judge you, but simply to believe in your strength, that's when healing begins. We often underestimate the power of trust, the dignity of honest work, and the courage it takes to rebuild from nothing. Eva didn't need a savior. She needed space to rediscover her worth. And Nathaniel, who once believed success meant solitude and silence, found that real strength lies not in building walls, but in building bridges. This story teaches us that second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about choosing what comes next with intention, love, and belief. Sometimes the most radical act is to stay, to show up for yourself and others, even when it's hard, even when you're scared. So wherever you are in life, whether you're holding on by a thread or finally finding your voice, remember, you are not your mistakes. You are what you choose to become next. Thank you for spending time with this story. It means a lot to us. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear about your corner of the world. And if this touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every voice matters and every heart finds home.